I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you may be. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my incredible co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and today Rebecca and I are going to be bringing you an unforgettable hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families and your pets and your gardens and the trees and the plants and the birds and the bees and all these critters and animals and that we share the wonderful place that we like to call planet Earth with. And today is our very special Easter Sunday show. Happy Easter, everyone. And it's also, of course, Passover, which is...
So Ramadan.
And Ramadan. Yes, can't forget Ramadan. So it's like this super holy Sunday, I guess. It's kind of like the trifecta of Sunday holiness.
I think pagan Easter is actually over.
Oh, we missed pagan Easter. Oh, that would have been the equinox.
Probably,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. But so what we're going to do is we're just going to chat for another 10 minutes or so about whatever happened to strike our fancy during the week. And you're welcome to call in at any time during the show at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. Or you could text at 419-973-5841. And we have our text reading device all propped up and ready to go here. Love to hear from you. And so after we chat for a bit, then we're going to have a guest calling in. Our good friend Pat Marida will be calling in and telling us about HB 434, which is basically the bill to turn Ohio into a nuclear waste dump, which we've been covering this bill as it's been going through the legislature. And I did notice that they waited until I was on the cruise in the Caribbean to actually pass it. So it kind of snuck in under the radar there because, but it still has not been signed into law. So there's one last chance to prevent this horrible, horrible thing from happening. So Pat Marida is going to talk to us about that. Then we're going to hear from our wonderful advertisers and patrons. And then Rebecca will be talking to us about what exactly, Rebecca?
Cape.
So Cape Hare's interesting. And then we got some ecological news. And as I say, hopefully sometime during this hour, we're going to hear from you at 877-909-1007 or texting at 419-973-5841. And I just got a brand new phone, so I'm all excited to get my first For a Green Future text on that. So we got a caller. It could be our guest or it could be somebody else. Josh will field the call, as he usually does with his professional aplomb. And what we have is today Easter, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about religion and how it kind of affects our attitude towards in relation to the environment. And so one thing that, this is, Easter is the supposed to be the biggest holiday for Christians because it celebrates the Christ's return from the dead. I've heard it said that without Easter, Christmas wouldn't really matter because he would have just been some guy, that said a lot of good stuff.
He was still a guy with cool stuff to say.
Yeah, I know, but it wouldn't have been like, the big thing because he came back from the dead.
Magical.
Right, and that's what sort of supported everything he said. I mean, the stuff that he says is good. Don't cast the first stone, and love your neighbor as yourself, and the meek shall inherit the earth, and the people who thirst for justice shall have justice. I mean, those things are all absolutely wonderful, but
people need something showy to reinforce it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about religion is that we need something more than the rational, apparently.
Yeah.
And I think it would be kind of irrational to deny that because, in almost every human society that I know of, there's that little bit extra, that stuff that goes beyond the rational. Now, there are atheists, and, my hat's off to them because most of the atheists I know are actually very wonderful, moral people.
Well, we learned in the Unitarian Church that if human beings are the highest intelligence of the universe, then it's all on us if we, the spiritual cavalry is not coming, and the earth will just be very unpleasant if we aren't nice to each other.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's perfectly true. Most of the stuff on that is preached by these religions actually also makes intellectual sense, is also true, but it would be irrational to deny the fact that we seem to need irrationality on top of that common sense stuff. I mean, Moses went up the mountain and came back down with these tablets that were inscribed by God, and somebody at the time might have said, Moses, you were gone just long enough for a guy with a chisel to put some stuff onto tablets. But the fact that it was God that did it meant thou shalt not kill. Gosh darn it, because there's all kinds of supernatural things that will happen to you. Consequences of breaking those commandments. And fasting is a good thing. I mean, it's actually to some degree a little bit of fasting's healthy for you, and it does kind of make you appreciate things and not get so attached to like food and stuff like that. And there's all as in the fasting for Ramadan, and I think that for me personally, my religion, I am Catholic. I've been Catholic, ever since I got baptized, and then I actually did the whole confirmation ceremony, which is when you're old enough to say, yeah, I actually do agree with it. So I committed to being a Catholic and a Christian, but I have been profoundly influenced by other religions, and specifically the Native American spirituality. And it took me a while. That I had some years where I was kind of personally conflicted about the fact that I believe in Catholicism, but I also, all this other stuff I'm learning about Native American spirituality makes, really appeals to me. And then I realized there really wasn't that much conflict between them. I mean, there's no... I can believe Christ came back from the dead 2,000 years ago. God raised him up. God could do whatever he wants. And but then there's other characters, like in Native American spirituality. The Anishinaabe, who used to live in this region, believed in a character called Nanabaju. And Nanabaju did all kinds of miraculous things. And I don't see any conflict in saying that, they also had this guy from way back when doing all kinds of miraculous things. I mean, it seems unfair to me to say my supernatural belief was true. That really happened. But your supernatural belief, no, that's just people making stuff up. And, it's and like I say, to the idea that you can be completely rational, I think that belief is actually irrational. because actually, in my experience, the craziest people I've known are the ones who thought they were just completely irrational.
So true. Yeah, irrationality is sometimes like your brain telling you stuff that you haven't had time to put together.
Right.
Rational and work through. It's sort of sometimes it's you jumping to the conclusion that you would eventually come to if you had all the facts and did all the mental math.
Yeah, that is often true. That encoded in the religious beliefs are practices that just actually work out better for everybody and provide like a necessary glue to the whole society, and things that you don't necessarily know as you're growing up and don't have the bigger picture yet. And so I strongly believe in the freedom of religion, and so happy Easter to all the Christians listening, and I believe you say joyous Passover. I think that's how you
something.
Yeah, because that was a celebration of God essentially taking a direct hand in things and saying, here, we're going to keep this lamp burning miraculously. So, just to...
No. Passover is in Egypt.
Oh,
the plagues.
Oh, the plagues. I'm sorry. Very
it's not
sorry.
All about lamps, Joe.
No, I'm right. You're right. Passover was the
brains of frogs and blood and things.
Right, and the Jews being spared.
Right.
My apologies to all our Jewish listeners. Thank you, Rebecca, for catching me on that one. And Ramadan is a time of fasting and prayer, and I do know that. So
yes,
really
sure.
So just hope everybody's celebrating this time in the way that best fits them, and of course, kind of the basis for having all this stuff right now is the fact that it's spring. And everything is coming back to life, and the birds are coming back, and the plants are growing again, and the flowers are blooming again, and that's something we can all celebrate. And Earth Day is coming up. We're going to talk more about that later on, but that's a holiday that literally everybody on the planet can celebrate, so regardless of religion. So thanks very much for listening. Now we're going to go to our guest. Pat Marida is on the line. Hi, Pat. How are you doing?
Hi, Joe. I'm doing great.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us, although I'm sorry that you have to join us again because we've been following this HB 434, and could you just... and apparently it's made a big leap, and could you just remind our listeners what it is and where it's at?
Yes, this is an Ohio House bill, the number 434, and it's been a lot under the radar, so know about it because else is going on at the State House and in the news and so forth. And not only is it under the radar, but it's really massive in scope, and it's already passed the Ohio House. So the organization I'm with, I'm a volunteer with the Ohio Nuclear Free Network, and so we're, urging the public to contact their state senators now and let them know some of the problems I'm going to explain with this bill.
Okay, so it passed the House, but is not yet passed the Senate.
That's right. It's going to be heard in a Senate committee very soon.
Okay.
So people can, you can go to the Ohio, just do a search for the Ohio legislature, and you can find your own state senator there with using your address. So anyway, this bill, it authorizes the creation of a new Ohio agency, and they're calling it the Ohio Nuclear Development Authority, which is an agency created. It would be created to do research and development on new nuclear reactors, and they're defining them as advanced. Which some of us don't think they're very advanced. But anyway, the bottom line is they wouldn't need a bill in the State House unless Ohio taxpayers were going to pay for this, because they could go right ahead and do that on their own. A really serious problem with this bill is that the new nuclear agency would be secretive, and it would be out of public view. And the way they do this is by putting it into the Ohio Department of Development. And that writes contracts for Jobs Ohio. And so Jobs Ohio, it's beyond the reach of the Ohio Open Records Act and the Ohio Ethics Laws and Sunshine Act and other accountability requirements.
Wow. Okay. There's one thing those of us that watch the nuclear industry know is that you don't want it to be beyond the ethics laws. It's okay.
Yeah, and you just can't do an open records request and see what all they're doing. So it doesn't say how long Ohioans would have to pay for this, or how much we would end up paying, and they haven't been given any hint about who is being paid, what's being developed, or where radioactive material might be shipped. This bill gives this authority, this new agency, the ability to take radioactive waste from Davis-Besse and Perry, and that is unprecedented for any state to ever do this.
Right, because taking care of nuclear waste is incredibly expensive and dangerous and dirty, and all the other states are smart enough not to try it on their own.
That's exactly right. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, is currently in charge of that, and there are certainly problems with that, but they have very specified rules and regulations, and this group doesn't. And if that secrecy isn't enough, that particular form of secrecy, this bill, Ohio House Bill 434, it outlines a really complex sequence of appointments that's designed to keep the public off of the agency board and off of a nominating council that would recommend board members to the governor. So the nominating committee recommends board members to the governor, and this bill forces the governor to choose only the people that this council recommends. Which I don't know if that's unprecedented, but that's certainly strange.
Yeah, we just learned from the appointment of Sam Randazzo as head of the Public Utilities Commission that the governor does not have a good track record of appointing people that are going to actually watch out for the public's interest already. And so if he gets to appoint a super secret nuclear waste committee, I would not be hopeful that he would actually do the right thing there and protect Ohioans.
Well, he can't even choose who to pick, really. He's forced to choose between the people that this nominating council comes up with. And here's the thing, this bill, with these enormous ramifications, it's only 14 pages long. And 8 of those 14 explain this really convoluted process for the appointment of these officials. So really it's about keeping all this in-house and keeping the public off of this board and even off of this nominating council that would recommend people to the governor.
So convoluted and undemocratic.
Absolutely. And moving right along, this bill is geared to benefit one small private company. It's a company called eGeneration of Cleveland, and it's had its hand out to the federal government for years for money for their research on thorium and molten salt reactors. And they've had no success in getting money from the federal government. And we know they're behind this because this bill was in the legislature before, and it was a lot longer. It was as long as 56 pages, and the language was taken right off of the eGeneration website. And so when this bill passed the House, only 7 people testified in favor of it, and 5 of those 7 have direct ties to eGeneration. And still, the bill sailed through the House. It passed 75 to 18.
Wow, that's crazy. Do you have a Republican Democrat breakdown on the votes?
I think most of the Republicans voted for it. Most of the Democrats voted against it, but there were, I can't say that. A lot of Democrats did vote for it, so there's just a lot of misinformation and lack of knowledge about what this bill would do. I think some of these people have been the nuclear industry sort of has so much money, and they've gotten out the false information that nuclear is somehow green and it produces no carbon. Well, nuclear produces a lot of carbon when anything else but the nuclear chain reaction is considered. But so I think a lot of people believe that nuclear, that industry propaganda, that nuclear helps with climate change. And so it's really important for people to say that nuclear does not help with climate change. It won't be ready for at least 10 years, and if not longer. And
10 years.
We actually, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes you wonder if these folks can be taught, because this, to me, this sounds like House Bill 6 all over again. Small group of people standing to make a lot of money off of the taxpayers, and with, keeping everything secret and, just again, benefiting the nuclear industry at the expense of all the other truly clean industries. And this one, I keep saying this is a bill to turn Ohio into a nuclear waste dump, and that's not an exaggeration. These folks who, as I understand it, only are required to have bachelor's degrees, get to stick nukes wherever they want. They don't have to have any kind of process or oversight, or their choices of a nuclear waste dump don't even have to be based on science. It doesn't say anything about that. They just get to literally do whatever they want with nuclear waste in Ohio.
Well, also, this bill, it allows for the use of eminent domain. And right there in this bill, it says, let me see what it says, matters of public necessity for which public monies may be spent and private property acquired. And nonetheless, it says private property acquired. But Representative Stein, who's the sponsor of the bill, when he addressed the House before they passed it, he assured members that the bill did not include eminent domain. And so it does not say eminent domain in the bill, but what else is acquiring private property? So they do have the ability to do that, so we don't know where it would be.
Dick Stein has a long history of just saying things that are untrue in support of the nuclear industry there. All right, so it passed the House and it's gone to the governor, or going to the Senate. Do we know when the Senate hearings are going to be?
Well, it's going before the Senate Energy and Public Utilities Committee, and they have not scheduled it to be heard yet. So it will be a little bit of time because they will first have the sponsor testimony 1 week. This is normal procedure. Then they will have the opponent testimony the next week, and then the third week the second week they have proponent testimony. The third week, opponent testimony, and by the fourth week they might possibly vote on it. So now, if people want to call, or contact all of the state senators, that would be good. The ones that are on the committee, and I can provide information about that on our website, on the Ohio Nuclear Free Network website. But also, just contact your own senator. That's probably the easiest thing for people to do. You can find that information if you do a search for the Ohio legislature. It's, ohio.legislature.gov, and you put in your address, and it will tell you who your senator is and how to contact them by phone or email.
Okay. Well, Pat, thanks for staying on top of this for us. I mean, this is, in a way, this issue is actually more important than House Bill 6 was, because that was a bill that hurt the current generation in terms of penalizing alternative clean energy like wind and solar and incentivizing dirty energy like nuclear and coal. So that was a terrible, terrible bill. But this bill affects future generations because the nuclear wastes are going to be around for hundreds of thousands of years. And if we do it wrong, if we have a bunch of yahoos with bachelor degrees saying, oh, well, we could just stick that over here in this municipal dump, that should be fine. that will be poisoning people in this region for essentially, in human terms, essentially forever, because we have never had a civilization that's managed to stick around as long as nuclear wastes are dangerous and will hurt the environment. So this is not something to kid around with, folks, and it's not something to entrust to a bunch of yahoos from Cleveland who have bachelor's degrees and somehow believe that radiation is good for you. I mean, let's not do this.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. And I did mention that with the Ohio Nuclear Free Network, if you do a web search for us, or it's onfn.blogspot.com, there are talking points, or soon will be up there if they aren't already, talking points on this bill. And one thing we didn't mention, too, is that this bill makes it clear that the public cannot sue for damages. So if something is spilled on your property, for instance, or an accident happens, the public cannot sue. So you're just kind of, out of luck if you get contaminated by any radioactivity during this process. But the state of Ohio would still have to pay for any cleanup. So that would put the liability as far as that goes, does rest with the state then.
I'm sensing. I don't know if this is true. This is pure speculation here, but this feels like something Energy Harbor would really want to happen because they own the nuke plants, and they would love to just offload all that nuclear waste that's sitting there in those pools that they have to monitor constantly to prevent, meltdowns and explosions. I'm sure they'd love to just say, it's Ohio taxpayers, it's yours now. You've bought it. I don't know if there's any evidence that they're back of this, but let me just say it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, there is a lot of I think 10 references to the Department of Defense, which makes this seem like there is an overlap between civilian and nuclear use, of any new technology or whatever in their PowerPoint reactor, that it could be used for military purposes and not just civilian.
Yeah. All right, Pat. Well, thanks so much for joining us and keeping us on top of this. And shame on the Ohio House for passing this anti-Ohio bill. I mean, you can't get much more anti-Ohio than saying, "Hey, let's cover Ohio with nuclear waste." I mean, that's terrible. So, thanks for keeping us abreast of what's going on there, Pat. And we'll talk more in the future.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, that was Pat Marida. And so that opens up the line again if anyone wants to call it, 877-909-1007. And now it's time to hear from our sponsors and advertisers. Four Green Futures brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. There's several ways to get a hold of them. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. You can also go to their website, wcparks.org. And they have a nifty app. Go to any app store and search for WC Parks. And that's the Wood County Park District. We're very happy to have them as an advertiser here on For a Green Future. And now, by way of public announcement, and this is not part of the advertising for the Wood County Park District, but any environmental organization can send us a notification or a press release at joe@joedemar4agreenfuture.org, and we will read it on the air for you. So by way of announcement, the Wood County Park District is restarting their annual native plant sale, which got put on hold because of COVID, but it's going to be May 7th, and it's It's going to be at the Wood County Fairgrounds because it got so big. Used to be at the park headquarters there in Bowling Green, but it got so big that cars were literally lining up in the streets to get in there. So they moved it to the fairgrounds. It's going to be Saturday, May 7th from 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. They're going to have over all kinds of native plants that you can put into your yard. And I've bought plants there before. I've got some really beautiful coreopsis going in my front yard now that I got from them. And native plants are really much more valuable to the ecosystem than all these invasive and tame plants that you can get from, normal garden outlets. I mean, there's over 500 native bee species, and they're really kind of adapted best to doing these native flowers. And I can attest to that because my coreopsis had all kinds of little bees that I hadn't seen before in there pollinating them, and it's really cool. So that's Saturday, May 7th from 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. to go get yourself some native plants. Okay, and we also want to thank our patrons, and those are people who went to patreon.com, searched for A Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page, which has all kinds of cool pictures on it. They scrolled through and chose the level that matched their own personal budget. Every month, a little bit comes out of their account and comes over to us, and that's how we can afford to keep the show on the air every week. For those of you that have been wondering how we can keep doing this, it's because of our wonderful patrons.
Be like the patrons.
Yes. Join them. Become one of them.
Yes.
So, all right. Thanks very much to our patrons. Okay, Rebecca, now you, in terms of Easter, of course, we never mentioned the Easter bunny, but I'm suspecting that may have inspired this week's report from you.
Right. Well, yeah, I decided to do something called a Cape Hare this week because they are native to, among other places, Egypt, where a lot of the major plot points of Passover occur. I think Jewish people are not allowed to eat them, technically speaking.
Okay.
Bunnies? I think. I forget. Somebody could call and correct me. It's fine. But yeah, and also they look kind of sort of like bunny rabbits, only leaner and meaner, basically. They're bigger, longer ears, kind of an elongated, just tough-looking skull. They look like the Easter bunny went bad, kind of. But you can see little actual hieroglyphics and like they're in Egyptian paintings of pharaohs hunting and stuff. That was presumably they bring little Coptic Egyptian children, Christian children, their Easter candy. I don't know because since there are no bunnies out there, they can't compete. But yeah, they are called Lupus capensis, desert hare. They're native to most of Africa and Arabia, not the jungly bits, obviously. And they're a species of least concern, so they're extremely adaptable, doing very, very well. Besides just generally looking like hares, they have a very soft coat, which is from reddish to sandy gray. And the females are larger, which is an unusual sexual dimorphism in mammals. Doesn't usually go down like that. They're nocturnal. They eat and redigest their poop because they get more nutrition out of it that way. And yeah, only cheetahs can apparently actually outrun them, but leopards, jackals, and caracals do ambush predators stuff to them. So they got to watch out. They have 1 to 3 leverets, which is what they call their babies, or what we call their babies, 4 times per year. And they're, like all hares, they're born with their eyes open, unlike bunnies. And there are currently 12 species of Cape Hares. Interestingly, they're native to, let's see, Maquia-type vegetation, which is Mediterranean evergreen shrubland biome, grasslands, the bush belt, the Sahara, Ethiopian highlands, and semi-desert areas. So we looked up some of those terms. The Maquia it's related to the term maquis, as in go to the maquis, which is what you do when you're on the run from the law, basically. It means kind of like go rogue. It's a term that was used for the French resistance in World War II, and also for anti-Franco exiles, Spanish exiles in France after the Spanish Civil War, who also helped with the resistance in France. And we're still were still doing things to fight against Franco up until I think the 1960s or something. And also there's a group called the Maquis in Star Trek. One of the Star Treks. Yeah. Or some sort of rebels from some sort of Civil War type situation.
Right, the Cardassian Wars, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they just kind of look like little scrubby scrublins everywhere. It's fairly arid. They like arid places. You're not going to see them, I think, in the rainforest, pretty much. And then the bushveld is a subtropical woodlands of South Africa, Botswana, and Zimbabwe.
And there are hares there too.
Yes, there are hares there.
Neat. Okay.
Lots of them, doing real well.
All right, and do they bring? So they do bring little Easter presents or little gifts. Of course, right? Okay, cool. And to answer your question,
but you want to stay away from these smaller chocolates that they leave on the ground.
The little round ones.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Just because you see them eating them doesn't mean you can.
Good advice. And to answer your question quickly, I just did a quick Google search, and no, rabbits are not kosher. So
yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, so if you're following that religion,
I think hares are in the same family, but they're not the same gene. Somewhere up the line evolutionarily, they are related to rabbits, but they're not rabbits.
Right. Yeah, they're
couple steps up.
Right, they're different, but they don't chew their cud, according to the internet, and that's why they're not kosher. So,
okay.
Yeah, and that's also why pigs are not kosher, because they're not cud chewers. Although they do, as you say, yeah.
I can see, not wanting to eat something that eats its own poop. I mean, it's not a scientific, well-founded fear, and yet you ick,
Yeah, so, all right. Okay, well, thank you for that Easter-related report, Rebecca. And now we go on to our ecological news segment. And got quite a bit to get through. And it is interesting. I do notice that every year about this time, usually I have to do some fairly deep searching to find our ecological news. But every year it gets to be around Earth Day, and all the news services start doing environmental stories, which, I'm not going to complain. First story up here for Ohio, there is another bill, HB 175, that has sneaky, they passed this through while I was on a boat in the Caribbean Ocean. House Bill 175 has passed both the House and the Senate, and it is sitting on DeWine's desk waiting for either a signature or a veto. And what this bill does is it says that the Ohio EPA cannot regulate what are called ephemeral streams. And ephemeral streams are simply streams that don't have water in them year-round. So if a stream dries out sometime in the middle of August or July, it only has to be dry for a week or two in the hottest part of the summer, and poof, that's an ephemeral stream. And the Trump administration, those used to be regulated by the federal EPA the same way as regular old streams, which is, ecologically speaking, makes perfect sense, because 60% of all streams in the country are actually ephemeral streams. So if you don't regulate the ephemeral streams, you basically give the polluters permission to do whatever they want, which is exactly what House Bill 175 does. It says once the federal government dropped out of it, the Ohio EPA actually stepped up and had a whole bunch of regulations in place, similar to the old ones, that said, if you're going to destroy an ephemeral stream, you need to pay for a permit, and you have to do mitigation to make sure that you're not going to increase the pollution going into Lake Erie and wrecking all the drinking water of the people in the area, because that's what getting rid of ephemeral streams does. Ephemeral streams are absolutely essential for filtering out all the runoff and the pollution and all the nasty stuff that's always trying to get into our waterways. Ephemeral streams actually do that very effectively. So once you get rid of them, now everything, just like a sewer, pours right into the big rivers and the big lakes, and everything gets nasty. But Republican Brett Hillier made an impassioned plea on the House floor, and this is his bill, and he was like, "Won't someone please think of the multimillionaires?" Because apparently about 14 real estate developers a year. There's about 14 permits a year to destroy ephemeral streams that right now, those poor guys that, have the hundreds of millions of dollars and want to build malls and warehouses and stuff, they end up having to mitigate the damage. Oh, man, those poor multimillionaires. But, of course, the damage they do to the ephemeral streams hurts literally everyone in the state of Ohio because it makes water undrinkable, and it promotes algae growth. This is part of why we have the algal bloom problems is pollution in ephemeral streams that gets washed into the main areas. And so a lot of environmental groups testified against this and were ignored, but they're all saying to the governor, look, you have your quote-unquote H2O Ohio, you have your big hundreds of millions of dollars saying you want to protect the lakes. If this law passes, it kind of negates everything you're supposedly trying to do. So this is actually a moment of truth for DeWine. The question is, does he really want to protect Lake Erie, or is this just a political stunt to kind of look good and spend a lot of taxpayer money to not very good effect? Because if this law passes, you more than wipe out any benefits H2O Ohio is going to cause. I mean, you can create a couple wetlands here and there, and that's very nice. But if you allow 60% of the streams in Ohio to be completely unregulated in terms of pollution and runoff, that's going to more than wipe out any gains a couple of nice wetlands are going to create. So it's up to the governor now, and now we get to all find out, is he a poser? We get to find out. Yeah, go ahead. You wanted to say something, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think he might be.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Okay, next, just a little thing. I've been watching, there's that new news network called Newsy, and I have to say I've been watching it a fair bit. It's available on broadcast TV. I don't have cable, so I can get it with an antenna. And they had a nice documentary on the other day. It was called Trashed. It was narrated by Jeremy Irons, and it was talking about the microplastic problem. And we can't, that's the problem with environmental stuff. We can't stop paying attention to one issue because it's time to pay attention to another. It was pretty informative, and I learned a couple things. One is that microplastics now outweigh plankton in the ocean.
Whoa.
Yeah, they've taken, they do the little nets with the tiny little holes in them so they can catch the microplankton and the plastic, and then they've weighed it, and there's almost 1.5 times as much plastic by weight as there is.
It must be like cheesecloth more than actual nets.
It is more like a cheesecloth, yeah. It's called a seine net, and it is kind of like a really fine fabric kind of thing. And it's getting into all aspects of the aquatic food chain, and they also, I knew this, but I had kind of forgotten it because, there's so much to remember. But plastic, when it gets in the water, has the tendency to absorb the things that the other toxins that are in there, like the pesticides and other kinds of nasty chemicals that have been washed into the water. They stick to the plastics, and then the plastics get broken up into these tiny little pieces, and these tiny little microscopic or almost microscopic pieces essentially get like this toxic coating on them, and then that gets ingested by the fish, and then the big things ingest the fish, and so the buildup of these chemicals in the top of the food chain, so things like killer whales, it's reached the point where now killer whales are actually having problems reproducing because they've absorbed so many of these toxins through the things that eat the plastic that they eat. So that was a kind of a sad thing, but it's a good It was a good documentary, although it kind of went off of plastics at the end and over into composting food waste, which is nice. It's something we should all do, and that actually ties in with the story we got coming up a little later. But it was a good documentary, and so the name of it is Trashed, and look it up if you'd like, if you have a chance. Next news story, and this one comes to us from PLOS, Sustainability and Transformation. It's an online journal produced by the University of Minnesota. And essentially what they did is they looked at the value of forests, the dollar value of forests, and they compared different services that the forests are providing us, and they discovered that forests standing actually provide more benefit, actually are worth more to us humans standing than they are cutting down. Which, environmentalists have been saying this for a long time, but they went out and actually put the dollar values to it. And the way they did it was they picked the top 5 valued services. And one of those services is climate regulation, because it absorbs CO2, and that lessens the greenhouse effect and global warming, and so it reduces storm damage and things like that. Another value is filtering out particulates, which is something that we kind of forget forests do. But if you put a bunch of little poisonous particles in the air, like fly ash from a coal plant, for example, which is really tiny, and that stuff goes over a forest, the forest actually causes it to filter out and drop out of the air and into the ground.
Wow.
And so that prevents human lung disease very directly. And you can actually show it and put a dollar figure on it now. And then also, of course, wood products, which is the one we always think about. You take the forest, cut it down, you get wood. And food crops, getting food from trees, like fruit trees and so forth. And Christmas trees, because they have a direct dollar amount they can attribute to the economic benefit of selling Christmas trees. And what they discovered in the U.S., the total value of trees every year, that they put about $114 billion worth of value into the economy. And most of that value, 88% of that value, comes from the climate regulation and the filtering of particulates. So those are the most valuable services forests provide us. And all those other services, wood products, food crops, Christmas trees, that's only 12% of the value. So, in other words, forests are much more valuable standing than cut down. And this kind of ties in with stuff I've been seeing lately. As you know, I took the train from Miami up here to Toledo a few weeks ago, and I saw all along the route, I saw clear-cutting trees. And yesterday I actually drove up to Traverse City in Michigan, and again, all along the route, I saw huge clear-cuts of trees. And this is not how we should do it, because once you clear-cut, you lose 88% of the benefit of that forest. Mm. And again, I've said before, this doesn't mean we don't get to harvest any trees. We can't just not harvest trees. We have needs. We need wood. But we have to do it in a way like the Menominee Indians do in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where you take the worst trees, you take them one at a time, you leave the best trees standing. That way you never take down the canopy, you never denude the land, and the forest keeps going, and the forest continues to provide all those benefits, and you get the other economic benefits without losing your health. Go ahead.
Did I mention a few days ago when we had that big storm? A tree came down in our backyard, and yada yada. Our dog pen is no longer a dog pen.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. It's a woodlot. Okay.
Basically.
All right, yeah, and lots of trees come down naturally, enough to provide us with stuff we need. I mean, right now, most of those trees that fall just get sort of ground up into wood chips. And
the people at the community garden came and hauled it away for us after our landlady cut it up.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Okay, so just another little tidbit. On to the next story. and this one comes to us from phys.org, phys.org, a story on April 15th. And again, I want to complain about the length of titles of articles. Back when we had newspaper articles that you actually tried to fit as much information in as few words as possible.
Right.
Mets win or something like that. But now here's the title of this article. It's Methane from Waste Should Not Be Wasted. Okay, and what it says is basically that dumps, which get 70% of the solid waste that we generate, goes into landfills. And those landfills are producing about 15% of the methane emissions in our society. And, as we said, methane is 25 times more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. And the number one source of methane is agriculture, which has around 26% or so. Very close behind is energy, which is, 24% or so. And then the number three are these dumps at 15%. And 60% of the methane in the atmosphere is caused by humans, and the other 40% are natural sources like lake bottoms and things like that. So essentially what the people in this article are saying is that we shouldn't be letting any of this landfill gas go out into the atmosphere. We should catch it all and use it. We could use that to generate electricity or heat our houses. Now, the thing is that the gas that comes off of a landfill, and I actually did this once myself. I went to a landfill that had been capped and had the little vent pipe sticking out, and I took a garbage bag and put it over the vent pipe, and after about, not quite a minute, the gases coming out had filled that garbage bag, that big garbage bag with methane. And then me being me, I decided to try to light it on fire and see what would happen. No. But luckily it didn't catch fire, because right now what mostly comes off of landfills is 50% CO2 and 50% methane, which is not enough to spontaneously burn. You have to have a higher percentage of methane. So now you have to take that gas and you have to filter it to concentrate the methane, and then you can burn it. Luckily for me, because who knows what would have happened if it was otherwise. But my point is, and the point of this article and this research, is that they've studied the microbiome. They studied the little bacteria and the other critters and plants and animals that are turning the waste into methane, and they think that they can, by tweaking those populations, they can get the higher levels of methane without having having to do all the filtering and stuff. And so then they should be able to just burn the landfill gas directly. So very provocative study, and if they succeed, that'll help with our trying to get to stopping greenhouse gases. Okay, another study, Norway, which we've reported on before. And Norway has a sustainable salmon fishery based on science, and they only take about 10% of the salmon run every year, and that more than provides enough salmon for everybody. In fact, Norway provides 57% of the world's supply of salmon, and they're able to do this because they've carefully looked at how much fish they take, and they don't take too much, and they leave enough for the whales and the dolphins and the other critters that eat the salmon. But they have discovered that there was a tipping point in 2005, and after that, the salmon got smaller, and the total catch also declined. And what they connect that to is in 2005, there was a shift in ocean currents, and instead of the cold water coming down from the poles off the coast of Norway, now the warm water from the south started coming up, and that reduced the phytoplankton by 50%. The zooplankton, not the phytoplankton. Phytoplankton's the base. The zooplankton eat the phytoplankton, right, and then the salmon eat the zooplankton. And so they changed that, and now salmon are getting smaller, and there's fewer of them. Last thing I wanted to mention is that Earth Day is coming up on Friday, April 22nd. Celebrate it in any way that you like. There's all kinds of little things going on around the region. You can look it up. Just search for Earth Day Celebration 2022. And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about this week. Thanks so much for listening. And thank you so much, Rebecca, for your report on the Easter hare.
You're welcome.
This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a